Hey Titans, it's Mr. Spilker here. Welcome to Chapter 2, Section 4, Multiplying and Dividing Real Numbers. So if you go ahead and put that heading on your notes for tonight, Chapter 2, Section 4, Multiplying and Dividing Real Numbers. We have two objectives tonight. Objective number 1 is to multiply and divide positive and negative numbers. And objective number 2 is to define the properties of 0. Alright Titans, let's get right into the rules for multiplying and dividing. Now before you start writing all of these plus signs and minus signs down, I'm going to simplify it for you by having you write down what is at the bottom of the screen. As you can see here, we have a positive times a positive equals a positive, and a negative times a negative equals a positive, and a positive divided by a positive is a positive. And you can see all the different possibilities there are and their outcomes stated there with the different signs. But the easiest way to remember the rules with multiplication and division is if there is 0 or even number of negatives, then the answer is always positive. So if there's no negatives, or if there's 2 negatives, or if there's 4 or 6, then the answer will always be positive. If there's an odd number of negatives, then the answer will be negative. So with multiplying and dividing real numbers, the easiest way to think of it, folks, is if there's 0 or even number of negatives, it's positive. If there's an odd number of negatives, then it's negative. So I would go ahead and make sure you have that in your notes. That's the best way to remember the rules. Now you'll hear some people say same signs, positive, different signs, negative. We don't like to state it that way in Algebra 1, just for the simple fact of getting it mixed up with our addition rules. Because our addition rules, we say same signs, answer will be positive. Different signs, or excuse me, with addition we say same signs, add and keep, different signs, subtract. We do have a song for multiplying and dividing. To get this song in your head, it's sang to the tune of Frere Jacques, or in other words, Are You Sleeping, Brother John? Same thing. So, you know, it goes, Are you sleeping, Brother John? Well, it's the same thing, but with this. It says, multiplying and dividing. Check the signs, check the signs. When the signs are the same, answers will be positive, different, negative, different, negative. So just think, if the signs are the same, it's always going to be positive, different, negative. Or, probably the better way to remember it, if there is an even number, or 0, number of negatives, then it's positive. If there's an odd number, negative. Now that we know the rules, we can go ahead and apply them. So let's go ahead and write down these two examples. Example number 1, we have negative 25 times negative 3. In example number 1, we have an even number of negatives. So therefore, our answer is going to be positive. 25 times 3 is 75. So our answer is a positive 75. On the second one, we have 128 divided by negative 8. Here we have an odd number of negatives. So our answer is negative. So 128 divided by negative 8. If we divide that, that comes out to be a negative 16. So go ahead and make sure you have those two examples down in your notes. Alright, now I'm sure you're thinking this lesson is pretty easy, and hopefully it is, but we got to add in a couple more things here, and that is decimals and fractions. So let's go ahead and jump into decimals. In your notes, you're going to want to go ahead and write down the keys for working with decimals here. Whenever you're working with the multiplication and division of decimals, treat them just like you would whole numbers. Then count the decimal places in the problem, and then move it that many places in your answer. So in this example, I have negative 31.2 times 4.6. So the way to do that is you treat it like it's 312 times 46. Then you just do basic old school elementary multiplication. 2 times 6 is 12. 1 times 6 is 6, plus 1 is 7. 3 times 6 is 18. Go ahead and put my 0 there. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 1 is 4. And 4 times 3 is 12. So if I go ahead and add those two together, I get 2, 15, 13, 4, and 1. So I get 14,352. Now I go back to the original problem. How many decimal places were in my problem? 2. 2 decimal places. So therefore I take my answer and I move it 1, 2. So my answer is 143.52. Then I go back and check my signs. I have an odd number of negatives. Odd number. So therefore my answer is negative. Negative 143.52. So students, whenever you are multiplying decimals, treat them just like they're whole numbers. So just disregard the decimals. Treat them like they're whole numbers. Then when you're done with that multiplication, count the decimal places that were in the original problem. Then move it that many places in your answer and you will have your solution. So go ahead and make sure you have those keys written down for multiplying decimals. Now we're not going to teach dividing decimals in this section. It's something we're going to mention in class, but we're not going to demand that. It's not an objective of ours in this lesson. Whenever you're dividing decimals, you're probably just going to seek out a calculator. But it is something we'll brush on in class. All right, 2 more examples here this evening, and these 2 examples deal with fractions. The first one, multiplying fractions. Whenever you're multiplying fractions, go ahead and first of all make them improper. So 2 1/4 times negative 3 1/5. You're going to make them improper by going ahead and taking the whole number times the denominator, add the numerator. So 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So 9/4. Then I'm going to multiply that by negative 3 1/5. So I go 3 times 5 plus 1. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 1 is 16. So I'm going to have 16/5. I then go ahead and look to cross reduce. Are 9 and 5, do they have anything in common that they both can be divided by? No. 16 and 4, you bet. If we divide that, we get 4 and 1. Then we multiply top times top, bottom times bottom. 9 times 4 is 36. 1 times 5 is 5. Then we think, how many times can 5 go into 36? And that would be 7 with 1 left over. So my final answer there is going to be a negative 7 1/5. Once again, my answer is negative because there's an odd number of negatives. So therefore it's negative 7 1/5. So the keys for multiplying fractions, you might want to write these down in your notes. Make them improper, then look to cross reduce, then take top times top, bottom times bottom, and then go ahead and simplify. Alright, the last thing we're going to cover here tonight is fractions. With fractions and division. Once again, the first step is to make them improper. So I'm going to go ahead and take 4 1/5 divided by negative 2 1/2 and make them improper. So I'm going to take and multiply by the bottom, add the top, so that would be 21/5. Then that will be divided by 2 times 2 plus 1 would be negative 5/2. So I make them improper first. Now, whenever you divide fractions, you always copy dot flip. So you're going to go ahead and keep the first fraction the same, 21/5, copy, then dot, and then flip. So that's going to change to be 2/5. In other words, multiply by the reciprocal. When we say reciprocal, we just mean flip it. So I change it to 2/5 there. Then I look to cross reduce, which I can't. So then I multiply straight across. I get on the top 42 and on the bottom 25. 25 can go into 42 one time. And then in that situation, there would be 17 left over. So it'd be 1 17/25. And since there is an odd number of negatives, my answer is negative. So whenever you divide fractions, you go ahead and you make them improper. Then you copy dot flip. Then it's the same as multiplication. So make sure you have those key tips written down in your notes. Alright, Titans, that concludes our lesson for tonight. Hopefully you understood multiplying and dividing real numbers. Make sure you have this important information down in your notes, and we'll look forward to working on it tomorrow in class. Thanks for your time.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.